subscribe to Storylab. Now, let's begin this one. The leather chair in the Pentagon's Earring office had molded to Eugene Brandt's frame over 4 years of 18-hour days. At 53, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff still carried the ramrod posture of the infantry lieutenant he'd been 3 decades ago, though silver had replaced the dark hair in his crew cut. His desk phone's red light blinked, the secure line. Brandt. Dad! Matthew's voice cracked, and Eugene's chest tightened. His son never called during duty hours. What happened? I'm at Benning. Medical just cleared me from the ER. Dad, my arm. Colonel Collins broke it. He's putting me up for demotion. Says I disrespected him in front of his men. Matthew's breathing was uneven, pain, and something else underneath. Fear. Eugene's jaw set. Matthew had enlisted against his advice, wanted to earn his own way without his father's rank smoothing the path. Eugene had respected that. Promised to stay out of his military career unless asked. Tell me everything. Start from the beginning. 3 weeks ago, I was on motor pool duty. Collins ordered us to sign off on maintenance logs for vehicles that hadn't been serviced. Said the inspection deadline was tight and we'd catch up later. I refused, told him it was a safety violation. He got in my face, told me to shut up and sign. Eugene wrote notes on his legal pad, his handwriting precise despite the anger building behind his ribs. I reported it through proper channels, sent it up to the IG complaint line like the regs say. 2 days later, Collins called me into his office. Just us. Told me I'd made a big mistake. Matthew paused, and Eugene heard him swallow hard. This morning during PT, he made me do burpees until I collapsed. When I got up, he shoved me backward. I fell against a bench. Heard the crack before I felt it. Witnesses, 30 guys. But Dad, they're all under his command. He controls their evaluations, their recommendations, everything. The MP who drove me to medical said it was an accident. Collins is telling everyone I tripped. Eugene's knuckles whitened around his pen. Who treated you? Captain Teresa Kirby. She documented everything, said the brake pattern was inconsistent with a fall, but she seemed scared to say more. What about your chain of command above Collins? Colonel Collins runs training battalion here. His CO is Brigadier General Walter Beasley. Beasley's been his mentor for 15 years. Dad, I think Beasley knows about the maintenance fraud. Maybe more. Eugene stood, walking to his window overlooking the Potomac. The water flowed gray under November clouds. He'd built his career on integrity, on the principle that the uniform meant something sacred. Officers who abused that violated every oath he'd taken. I'll handle this. Dad, no, I didn't call so you'd. Matthew. Eugene's voice carried the steel that made generals sit straighter in briefings. You did the right thing. Reporting misconduct is every soldier's duty. What Collins did to you isn't just abuse. It's assault, false official statements, and witness intimidation. That ends now. He'll make my life hell if you come down here. He won't get the chance. Stay in the barracks. Talk to no one about our conversation. I'll see you tomorrow. Eugene hung up and pressed his intercom. Marcia, give me everything on Colonel Roderick Collins, Fort Benning. Service record, efficiency reports, any IG complaints filed. And book me a flight to Columbus tonight. Private transport. His aide's voice hesitated. Sir, you have the Senate Armed Services Committee hearing tomorrow at 9. Reschedule it. Roderick Collins stood in his office at Fort Benning, watching the training grounds through his window with a tumbler of bourbon in his hand. 46 years old, 24 years of service, and he'd finally carved out a perfect little kingdom in the 198th Training Battalion. The troops feared him. The NCOs obeyed without question. And that idiot kid Matthew Brandt had almost wrecked it all. He'd handled it, though. One good shove, a broken arm, and the boy would be too busy with medical boards to cause more trouble. The other soldiers had gotten the message loud and clear. Collins owned this battalion, and crossing him meant pain. His desk phone rang. Collins, sir, it's Sergeant Dennis Conway at the main gate. We just had a VIP ID scan. I thought you should know. Collins set down his bourbon. Who? General Eugene Brandt, sir. Chairman of the Joint Chiefs. According to the system, he's en route from the airfield. ETA, 15 minutes. The glass slipped from Collins' hand, bourbon soaking into his carpet. Brandt? Are you certain? Yes, sir. 4-star plates on a staff car. 2-vehicle convoy with security detail. Collins' mind raced. Brandt. Eugene Brandt. No, it couldn't be. The private he'd dealt with that morning was Matthew Brandt. Same last name. His throat constricted. Sergeant, that private you brought to medical this morning, Brandt. What's his full name? Papers rustled. Private Matthew Eugene Brandt, sir. Collins' legs went weak. He collapsed into his desk chair, staring at the photo of himself receiving his Silver Star. His whole career flashed before his eyes. The corners he'd cut, the regulations he'd bent, the men he'd broken to maintain control. It had all seemed manageable when it was just enlisted men too afraid to fight back. But the chairman of the Joint Chiefs. His phone rang again. This time, the number made his stomach drop. Brigadier General Walter Beasley. Rod, what the hell have you done? Beasley's voice was tight with panic. I just got a call from Forscom. The chairman is at Benning, and apparently it's about an incident in your battalion. Sir, I can explain. You better hope you can, because if this blows back on me, I swear to God, Rod, I'll hang you out to dry myself. Whatever you've been doing down there, whatever you thought you could get away with, it's over. You understand me? Over. The line went dead. Collins sat in silence, his heart hammering. He'd been so careful. The maintenance fraud was small time, just enough to make his numbers look good and curry favor with contractors who kicked back gifts. The rough discipline kept soldiers in line and made his battalion's performance metrics shine. Beasley had looked the other way because it made his brigade look good too. But assaulting the chairman's son? A knock at his door. Master Sergeant Vince Frost entered, his face grave. Sir, the MP just called. General Brandt's convoy passed the checkpoint. He'll be at headquarters in 5 minutes. Collins straightened his uniform, his mind scrambling for a strategy. He'd weathered investigations before. Inspectors could be managed, statements coordinated, witnesses intimidated. He just needed to stay calm, stick to his story about an unfortunate training accident, and, through his window, he saw the staff cars pull up to the battalion headquarters. Eugene Brandt emerged from the lead vehicle, and Collins' breath caught. The man moved with the controlled precision of a predator. 4 stars gleamed on his shoulders. 2 colonels flanked him, both carrying briefcases. This wasn't a concerned father visiting his son. This was the chairman of the Joint Chiefs arriving to conduct an official inquiry. Collins reached for his phone to call his lawyer, then stopped. His hands were shaking. Eugene took in Fort Benning's 198th Training Battalion headquarters with a tactical eye. The building was dated, but well-maintained, the grounds pristine. On the surface, everything looked squared away. But he learned long ago that the shiniest formations often hid the darkest secrets. Colonel Mark Walker, the judge advocate general officer he'd brought from D.C., matched his stride. Sir, I've reviewed the preliminary data your aide compiled on the flight. Colonel Collins has a concerning pattern. 17 IG complaints over 6 years, all dismissed or closed without substantiation. Unusually high injury rates in his battalion, 32% above base average. And 4 soldiers requested transfers out citing command climate concerns. Yet he's still in command. Eugene's tone was flat. His raider is Brigadier General Beasley, who's given him top ratings every cycle. Beasley's own career has been on an upward trajectory. Making waves about Collins would complicate that. Eugene pulled open the headquarters door. The duty sergeant behind the desk stood so fast his chair rolled backward. Sir, General Brandt, sir. The young man's salute was parade ground sharp, his eyes wide. At ease. I need to see Colonel Collins immediately. Yes, sir. He's in his office. 2nd floor, into the hall. Eugene climbed the stairs with Walker and his security chief, Lieutenant Colonel Evan Plummer. Each step measured, each breath controlled. He'd faced down hostile defense ministers, stared across negotiating tables at foreign generals who commanded armies. But this felt different. This was personal in a way nothing had been since he'd held his infant son in a hospital room 20 years ago. He would not let emotion cloud his judgment. The military had rules, regulations, protocols. He would use every one of them to ensure justice was done properly, thoroughly, and permanently. Collins' door was open. The man stood beside his desk in Class A uniform, his posture rigid but his face pale. When Eugene entered, Collins saluted. "General Brandt, sir. I wasn't informed you'd be visiting the installation." Eugene returned the salute crisply, then closed the door behind his team. "Colonel Collins, I'm here regarding an incident involving Private Matthew Brandt that occurred at approximately 0600 hours this morning. You are hereby ordered to make no statements regarding this incident to anyone except investigating officers, legal counsel, and your chain of command. You are also ordered not to contact, directly or indirectly, any potential witnesses. Do you understand these instructions?" Collins Adams applebobbed. "Sir, I believe there's been a misunderstanding. Private Brandt suffered an unfortunate accident during. Do you understand these instructions, Colonel?" Eugene's voice could have cut steel. "Yes, sir. Colonel Walker here will be conducting a formal investigation under Article 32 of the Uniform Code of Military Justice. You will make yourself available for questioning. Your duty weapon, personal electronic devices, and all battalion records are hereby secured as evidence. Lieutenant Colonel Plummer will escort you to your quarters, where you will remain until further notice. You are not under arrest at this time, but you are ordered not to leave Fort Benning or communicate with any battalion personnel except through official channels. Clear." Collins opened his mouth, closed it, then whispered, "Yes, sir." "Where is Private Brandt currently?" "Barracks, sir. Building 12. Eugene nodded to Plummer, who stepped forward. "Colonel Collins, if you'll come with me." As Collins left, his shoulders slumped and his gait unsteady. Eugene finally allowed himself a moment. He pressed his palms flat on Collins' desk and took a long breath. Walker closed his briefcase. "Sir, with your permission, I'd like to begin interviewing soldiers immediately. If there's a pattern of abuse, we need statements before anyone has time to coordinate stories." "Granted. I'll speak with Captain Kirby, the treating physician, then see my son." Eugene straightened. "Mark, I want everything. Every corner Collins cut, every soldier he hurt, every regulation he violated. We're going to dismantle his career piece by piece, and we're going to do it by the book so thoroughly that no appeals board will ever question it." "Understood, sir." Eugene walked out of the office, down the hall, and out into the cold Georgia afternoon. The sun was setting behind the training ranges, painting the sky orange and purple. Somewhere in those barracks, his son was wondering if his father would protect him or if standing up for what was right had destroyed his military career before it began. Eugene would show him that integrity still mattered, that the uniform still meant something, that bastards like Collins couldn't hide behind rank forever. The chairman of the Joint Chiefs had come to Fort Benning, and he was going to burn Roderick Collins' world to ash. Matthew Brandt sat on his bunk in Building 12, his casted arm resting on a pillow. The barracks were silent, too silent. Word had spread that the chairman was on base, and everyone knew why. Soldiers huddled in small groups, whispering, casting glances his way. The door opened. Matthew looked up, expecting another curious private. Instead, his father walked in. Eugene Brandt, in his 4-star dress uniform, was an imposing sight anywhere. In the cramped enlisted barracks, he seemed larger than life. But when Matthew met his eyes, he saw something beyond the rank and authority. He saw his dad. "Matthew." "Sir." Matthew stood automatically, fumbling his salute with his good arm. "Sit down." Eugene moved to the bunk across from his son, ignoring the dozen soldiers who'd frozen in place throughout the room. Everyone else outside. Now, the barracks emptied in seconds. Father and son sat in silence for a moment. Eugene studied the cast, the bruises on Matthew's face, the defeat in his posture. His jaw tightened. "How bad is the pain?" "Manageable, sir." Matthew's voice was flat. "They gave me tramadol." "Stop calling me sir. It's Dad right now." Eugene leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "I need you to tell me everything again. Every detail, every witness, every time Collins crossed a line. And I need the truth about what's been happening in this battalion beyond just today." Matthew hesitated, then the words poured out. He told his father about the pattern of abuse he'd witnessed over 4 months. How Collins had a core group of NCOs, Sergeant First Class Lonnie Hartman, Staff Sergeant Carlton Cannon, who enforced his will through intimidation. How soldiers who questioned orders found themselves on constant details, denied leave, or subjected to punishment PT that bordered on torture. He described Private Carey Pierce, who'd been hospitalized for heat exhaustion after Collins made him run in full gear for 3 hours in 90-degree weather. The incident had been written up as inadequate hydration, Pierce's fault. Private Randy Palmer, who'd fractured his collarbone during a training exercise where Collins ordered hand-to-hand drills without proper safety gear or supervision. Private Leon Richards, who'd requested a transfer after reporting that Collins had ordered him to falsify ammunition inventory counts. How many soldiers know about this? Eugene asked. All of them. But Dad, Matthew's voice broke. They're terrified. Collins controls everything. Performance reviews, assignment recommendations, even medical boards. Cross him, and your career is over before it starts. I reported him because I thought the system would protect me. I was stupid. You were brave. Eugene gripped his son's shoulder. And the system will protect you. It's broken right now because men like Collins and Beasley have corrupted it. But I'm going to fix it. General Beasley? Matthew's eyes widened. He's involved. He's protected Collins for years, ignored complaints, and profited from Collins making his brigade look good on paper. Tomorrow, investigators will interview every soldier in this battalion privately, off base if necessary. Colonel Walker is one of the best JAG officers in the Army. No one will retaliate against soldiers who tell the truth. I guarantee it. Matthew looked at his father, hope and doubt warring on his face. What if no one talks? What if they're too scared? Eugene stood, adjusting his uniform. Then I'll find another way. Collins left a trail, Matthew. Men like him always do. They get comfortable, sloppy. They think rank makes them untouchable. His eyes hardened. I'm going to show him what happens when you break the most important rule in the military. You take care of your people. He forgot that. It's going to cost him everything. Captain Teresa Kirby had been dreading this conversation since the MP called to tell her the chairman wanted to see her. She sat in the base hospital's conference room, her hands folded on the table, watching the most powerful officer in the U.S. military read her medical report on Private Brandt. Eugene finished the last page and looked up. This is thorough, Captain. The documentation of injury patterns, your notes about inconsistencies in the official statement. You did good work. Thank you, sir. Why didn't you report your suspicions? Teresa felt her face flush. Sir, Colonel Collins has a reputation. Soldiers who cross him face consequences. I documented everything properly so that if questions arose later, there would be a record. But directly accusing him of assault without witnesses willing to testify would have ended my career and not helped Private Brandt. You're right. Eugene set down the report. That's the reality of what Collins created here. A command climate where doing the right thing feels impossible. But that ends today. I need you to go beyond your report. I need every detail you observed about Private Brandt's injuries, and I need you to review medical records for every soldier who's been treated for injuries in the 198th Battalion over the past 18 months. Look for patterns. Injuries inconsistent with stated causes. Hospitalizations that don't match the official narrative. Teresa straightened. Sir, that could take days. You have 72 hours. Colonel Walker's investigation needs medical evidence to corroborate soldier testimony. Some of those men and women will find the courage to speak. Others won't. But the injuries don't lie, Captain. Build me a medical case that proves Collins has been systematically abusing his soldiers. Yes, sir. Teresa paused. Sir, may I speak freely? Always. Private Brandt is a good soldier. He didn't deserve what happened to him. None of them did. If you can actually stop Collins, a lot of people will sleep better at night. Eugene nodded slowly. Collins is done, Captain. This isn't about one incident anymore. This is about accountability. When I'm finished, every officer and NCO who enabled this will face consequences. And every soldier who suffered will see justice done. The next morning, Colonel Mark Walker set up operations in an empty barracks building on the far side of Fort Benning. Eugene had requested isolation from the 198th Battalion's area, somewhere soldiers could come without Collins loyalists watching. By 0800 hours, a line of nervous privates and specialists stretched outside. Eugene watched through one-way glass as Walker conducted interviews. The first 3 soldiers gave careful, scripted statements that matched Collins' version. Private Brandt had tripped during PT. Unfortunate accident. Colonel Collins immediately rendered aid. Their eyes darted to the door, constantly, voices trembling. The 4th soldier was different. Private Darrell Roth entered the room with squared shoulders and met Walker's eyes directly. 22 years old, infantry, 8 months at Fort Benning. Private Roth, thank you for coming. This interview is being recorded. You're not under investigation, and nothing you say here will be used against you. We're investigating command climate issues in the 198th Battalion. I need you to tell me what you've observed. Roth didn't hesitate. Sir, Colonel Collins runs that battalion like a prison camp. He's got a group of NCOs who do his dirty work, Hartman, Cannon, and Sergeant Morris Marsh. They enforce discipline through physical punishment. Soldiers who question orders get correction training, which means getting smoked until they puke or pass out. Walker leaned forward. Can you provide specific examples? Yes, sir. 2 months ago, Private Leon Richards questioned an order to sign off on defective equipment. Collins had Sergeant Hartman take him out to the motor pool at 0500, made him low crawl through gravel for an hour. Richards' hands and knees were shredded. Medical called it abrasion from training, but everyone knew the truth. Why didn't Richards report it? He tried, sir. Went to the company commander, Captain Stephen Gwynn. Gwynn told him to stop making trouble and threatened him with an Article 15 for disrespecting an NCO. Richards requested a transfer 2 weeks later. Walker made notes. Tell me about yesterday's incident with Private Brandt. Roth's expression hardened. We were doing PT on the pad behind headquarters. Collins had been riding Brandt for weeks since he reported the maintenance fraud. Yesterday morning, Collins made Brandt do burpees while the rest of us ran. When we came back from our 2 miles, Brandt was barely standing. Collins walked up to him, said something I couldn't hear, then shoved him hard. Brandt fell backward over a bench. I heard the bone crack from 30 feet away. How many soldiers witnessed this? 35, sir. Full company formation. Will they testify? Roth hesitated. Some will. Private Gilberto Braun, Private Zachary Marquez, Specialist Michael Escobar. They hate Collins. But most are terrified. Collins controls fitness reports, school recommendations, everything. Cross him, and you're stuck at Fort Benning doing the worst details until your contract runs out. Walker nodded. Private Roth, I need you to do something for me. Quietly identify every soldier willing to testify. Don't push anyone, but let them know this investigation is real and protected. Can you do that? Yes, sir. Anything to stop him. Eugene watched Roth leave, then entered the interview room. Good instincts bringing him in. He'll be our key to flipping others. Walker pulled out a folder. Sir, I've been reviewing the battalion's administrative records. The patterns are damning. 17 IG complaints over 6 years. You already knew that. But here's what's interesting. Every complaint was investigated by Beasley's staff, and every investigation concluded within 2 weeks with insufficient evidence. That's impossibly fast for legitimate investigations. Beasley buried them. Worse, I think he and Collins have been running a scheme. Look at these contractor payments. Walker spread out financial documents. The battalion's maintenance budget has ballooned by 40% over 3 years. Equipment keeps failing, requiring constant outside repairs. But the contractors getting those jobs all have connections to Beasley's brother-in-law, who owns a defense consulting firm. Eugene studied the papers, his mind working through the implications. They're deliberately letting equipment fail, so Beasley's family profits from the repair contracts. The falsified maintenance logs weren't just about making numbers look good. They were about creating plausible deniability for systematic fraud. That's my assessment, sir. And it gets better. Remember those soldiers who requested transfers? I pulled their records. 4 of them reported seeing Collins meet with civilian contractors in his office after hours. 1, Specialist Randy Palmer, claims he overheard Collins and Beasley discussing percentage cuts during a chance encounter in the parking lot. Eugene felt ice settle into his veins. This was bigger than abuse. This was a criminal enterprise using soldiers as cover and ruining anyone who got too close to the truth. Where's Palmer now? Fort Hood. Transferred 6 months ago. Get him on a flight here today. I want his statement under oath. Eugene pulled out his phone. And I'm calling the CID. This is now a criminal investigation. Fraud, assault, conspiracy. Beasley and Collins both go down. Walker grinned. Sir, I've been waiting to hear those words all morning. Brigadier General Walter Beasley sat in his office at brigade headquarters, staring at the encrypted email on his screen. His brother-in-law, civilian contractor Dennis Conway, had sent an hour ago. Pull the plug. The chairman knows. Lawyers say to cut ties immediately. Beasley's hand shook as he deleted the email, then the entire account. 23 years of service, a general star, a promising career path to 2-star rank. All of it crumbling because Roderick Collins couldn't keep his temper in check and picked the wrong private to brutalize. His desk phone rang. Beasley. Sir, this is Colonel Walker from the JAG Corps. I'm conducting an investigation into the 198th Training Battalion, and I need to interview you regarding oversight of Colonel Collins' command climate and administrative procedures. Beasley forced his voice steady. Of course, Colonel. Would you like to schedule this? Now, sir. I'm in the parking lot. The line went dead. Beasley sat frozen, panic rising in his throat. He grabbed his personal phone and called Collins. No answer. He tried 3 more times. Nothing. There was a knock at his door. Sir, Colonel Walker to see you. Walker entered with a female officer Beasley didn't recognize and a CID agent in civilian clothes. Walker's expression was professional but cold. General Beasley, thank you for seeing us. This is Major Janine Springer from the JAG Corps and Special Agent Samantha Lawson from CD. We need to discuss your relationship with Colonel Collins and several contractors who've received lucrative service agreements through your brigade. Beasley's mouth went dry. I don't understand what you're implying, Colonel. Lawson set a folder on his desk. General, we have financial records showing irregular payments, testimony from soldiers regarding command climate violations you failed to address, and evidence of fraud involving maintenance contracts. We also have phone records showing frequent communication between you, Colonel Collins, and Dennis Conway, who is under investigation for defense contractor fraud. You're not under arrest at this time, but I need to inform you of your rights. As Lawson read him his Miranda rights, Beasley felt his world collapse. He thought he was being careful. The contractors had covered their tracks, Collins had kept the soldiers in line, and the money had flowed quietly into offshore accounts. A few more years, then retirement, and no one would ever know. But Eugene Brandt had come to Fort Benning. And Brandt didn't just want to protect his son. He wanted blood. That evening, Eugene sat in a temporary office reviewing statements. Private Roth had delivered. 12 soldiers now willing to testify about Collins' abuses. Captain Kirby's medical review revealed a pattern of injuries consistent with systematic physical abuse across 18 months. And the CD had uncovered financial connections between Collins, Beasley, and 3 contractors that suggested fraud totaling over $3 million. Matthew entered quietly. Dad! Eugene looked up. How's the arm? Hurts less today. Matthew sat down, studying his father. The guys are talking. They're saying you're taking down the whole command structure. Collins, Beasley, even some of the NCOs. They're right. That's incredible. I didn't think it was possible. I thought I'd report Collins and get destroyed for it. Eugene set aside his papers. You did get hurt. Collins broke your arm, nearly wrecked your career. But you did the right thing anyway. Do you know how rare that is? How many people see corruption and look away because fighting it is too hard? It didn't feel brave. It felt stupid. That's because bravery never feels like the stories say it will. It feels like being scared and doing it anyway. You stood up for what's right when it would have been easier to stay quiet. That's the soldier I raised. That's the man I'm proud of. Matthew's eyes glistened. What happens now? Tomorrow, Walker convenes an Article 32 hearing. Collins will face charges of assault, false official statements, conduct unbecoming, and conspiracy to commit fraud. Beasley faces fraud charges, obstruction of justice, and dereliction of duty. The NCOs who help them will face their own proceedings. And every soldier they hurt will see them held accountable. Will it stick? Or will they get lawyers and make it go away? Eugene's expression hardened. I've made sure every regulation was followed to the letter. Every statement properly documented. Every piece of evidence legally obtained. Collins and Beasley are going to face a court-martial so airtight that no appeals court will overturn it. They'll lose their rank, their pensions, and their freedom. That's not revenge, Matthew. That's justice. Matthew nodded slowly. Thank you, Dad. Don't thank me. You started this by having the integrity to report corruption. I just finished it. Eugene stood, putting a hand on his son's good shoulder. Come on, let's get dinner. You're probably sick of Chow Hall food. As they walked out into the Georgia evening, Eugene felt something he hadn't in years. Satisfaction in the purity of the mission. There were no geopolitical complications here. No compromises or diplomatic necessities. Just right and wrong, justice and corruption. And he just reminded Fort Benning which side would always win. The Article 32 hearing convened 3 days later in Fort Benning's courtroom. A stark space with wooden benches and the United States flag flanking the judge's bench. Colonel Roderick Collins sat at the defense table in his dress uniform, stripped of all insignia except basic rank. His attorney, a sharp-eyed civilian named Reginald Sherman, whispered urgently in his ear. Across the aisle, Colonel Walker prepared his case with military precision. Behind him sat Matthew, Captain Kirby, in a gallery filled with soldiers from the 198th Battalion. Eugene sat in the front row, his presence a silent reminder of what this hearing represented. The investigating officer, Colonel Vince Frost from Fort Bragg, called the court to order. This Article 32 hearing will determine if sufficient evidence exists to refer charges against Colonel Roderick Collins to a general court-martial. Charges include assault consummated by battery, false official statements, conduct unbecoming an officer, and conspiracy to commit fraud. Colonel Walker, call your first witness. The United States calls Private Matthew Brandt. Matthew took the stand, his casted arm resting on the witness box. He raised his good hand for the oath, his voice steady. Walker led him through the events of that morning. The targeted harassment, the excessive PT, the moment Collins shoved him. Matthew's testimony was clear, detailed, and damning. Sherman cross-examined aggressively. Private Brandt, isn't it true you have a disciplinary record? That you've received counseling for questioning orders? I received counseling for refusing to falsify maintenance logs, sir. But you were counseled. You have a history of insubordination. I have a history of following regulations, sir. Sherman's jaw tightened. Private Brandt, your father is the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Isn't this entire proceeding about using his influence to destroy my client's career because you couldn't handle military discipline? Walker stood. Objection. Argumentative and irrelevant. Sustained. Frost looked at Sherman coldly. Counsel, the witness's family connections don't change the evidence. Move on. Sherman tried another angle, but Matthew didn't crack. He'd prepared, and more importantly, he had the truth on his side. The prosecution called 12 more soldiers. Each testified about Collins' systematic abuse, the excessive punishment, the intimidation, the retaliation against anyone who questioned orders. Private Darrell Roth described the motor pool incident with Leon Richards. Specialist Gilberto Braun testified about witnessing Collins strike 2 different soldiers during separate training exercises. Private Zachary Marquez described how Sergeant Hartman had threatened him when he considered reporting Collins to the IG. Then Captain Kirby took the stand with her medical analysis. She presented a chart showing injury rates in the 198th Battalion versus base averages, 32% higher. She detailed 17 cases where injuries were inconsistent with stated causes. She described Matthew's fracture pattern and demonstrated why it couldn't have resulted from a simple fall. In my medical opinion, Kirby concluded Private Brandt's injury was caused by significant force applied to his upper body while he was falling backward. The break pattern, combined with bruising on his chest consistent with a 2-handed shove, supports his account completely. Sherman tried to discredit her, but Kirby had 20 years of emergency medicine experience. She didn't budge. The final blow came from CID Special Agent Lawson. She presented financial records showing suspicious payments to Collins' offshore accounts, phone records connecting him to Beasley and contractor Dennis Conway, and testimony from a former NCO who'd witnessed Collins and Beasley meeting with Conway to discuss revenue streams. We've identified over $3 million in fraudulent contractor payments, Lawson testified. Colonel Collins and General Beasley deliberately falsified maintenance reports to create justification for expensive repairs. Conway's company got sole source contracts, and Collins received 15% of the contract value deposited into offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands. The courtroom buzzed. Sherman looked stricken. Collins stared at the table, his face gray. Frost banged his gavel. Order. Agent Lawson, do you have documentation supporting these allegations? Yes, sir. Bank records, emails recovered from Colonel Collins' personal computer, and testimony from Conway, who's cooperating with authorities in exchange for a reduced sentence. Sherman leaned over to whisper to Collins, who shook his head violently. Sherman tried again. Collins stood abruptly. I'd like to make a statement. Sherman grabbed his arm. Rod, don't. Collins shook him off. I need to say something. He faced the investigating officer. Sir, I made mistakes. Command is difficult. Discipline is necessary. Things got out of hand, but I never meant to hurt anyone. Private Brandt's injury was an accident, a moment of lost temper. The financial irregularities, those were Beasley's idea. I just went along. Walker stood slowly. Colonel Collins, are you confessing to assault? Collins' eyes darted around the room, landing on Eugene. The chairman's expression was carved from stone. Collins seemed to deflate. I shoved him. I shouldn't have. He fell, broke his arm. I panicked and tried to cover it up. His voice cracked. I'm sorry. The courtroom exploded. Frost hammered his gavel repeatedly. Order. Order in this court. Sherman looked ready to faint. He pulled Collins back down into his seat, hissing urgently, but the damage was done. Frost called a recess. As the room cleared, Eugene approached Walker. That was unexpected. He broke, saw the evidence piling up, and tried to get ahead of it by throwing Beasley under the bus. Walker smiled grimly. Won't help him. That confession just guaranteed a conviction on assault, and the fraud charges stick regardless of whose idea it was. What about Beasley? His hearing is tomorrow. But with Collins' testimony about it being Beasley's idea, plus all the financial evidence, he's done. Eugene nodded, satisfied. Good. Make sure every soldier who testified knows they're protected. No retaliation, no career consequences. I'm issuing a directive to Fort Benning Command that anyone involved in testifying against Collins receives assignment priority and positive fitness reports. Sir, that's highly unusual. So, is a battalion commander running a criminal enterprise while beating soldiers? These men and women showed courage. I'm rewarding it. Brigadier General Walter Beasley's Article 32 hearing was shorter. He'd hired a better attorney, a former JAG officer named Holly McCall, who fought every piece of evidence. But the paper trail was too clear. CID had seized computers from Beasley's office and home. Forensic accountants had traced money flows through 3 shell companies. Conway had provided detailed testimony about how Beasley had approached him with a scheme 4 years ago, promising lucrative contracts in exchange for kickbacks. Most damning was the testimony from Lieutenant Colonel Evan Plummer, Eugene's security chief, who'd conducted a parallel investigation. He discovered that Beasley had systematically buried IG complaints not just about Collins, but about 2 other officers in his brigade who'd also been abusive. The pattern was clear. Beasley protected officers who made his brigade look good on paper, regardless of their methods. When Plummer presented evidence that Beasley had personally threatened soldiers who tried to report misconduct, the investigating officer's face darkened. General Beasley, did you ever instruct soldiers to withdraw IG complaints? Beasley's attorney answered, my client invokes his right against self-incrimination. Did you receive payments from Dennis Conway totaling approximately $400,000 over 3 years? My client invokes his right against self-incrimination. Did you falsify maintenance reports to justify contractor payments? My client invokes his right against self-incrimination. The investigating officer set down his pen. General Beasley, I've heard enough. I'm referring all charges to a general court-martial. You are hereby relieved of command and restricted to Fort Benning pending trial. Bailiff, take him into custody. Beasley stood shakily as MPs approached. His attorney protested, but the investigating officer was unmoved. Counsel, your client faces charges that include conspiracy, fraud against the United States, and obstruction of justice. He's a flight risk with significant financial resources hidden in offshore accounts. Bail is denied. As MPs led Beasley away in handcuffs, Eugene watched from the gallery. Beside him, Matthew whispered, "Is it always like this? When you build an airtight case and follow every regulation to the letter." Yes, Collins and Beasley thought rank made them untouchable. They forgot that in the military, no one is above the law. The uniform means something. It's a promise we make to defend the Constitution and take care of our people. They broke that promise. This is the consequence. 6 months later, Eugene stood in a conference room at Fort Benning watching the news coverage on a television. CNN's legal correspondent stood outside the courthouse. In a stunning conclusion to what prosecutors called systematic corruption at the highest levels of military command, former Colonel Roderick Collins and former Brigadier General Walter Beasley were both convicted today on all charges. Collins received 15 years at Fort Leavenworth Military Prison, forfeiture of all rank and pay, and a dishonorable discharge. Beasley received 20 years, also forfeited his rank and pension, and was dishonorably discharged. 3 NCOs who assisted Collins received lesser sentences ranging from 3 to 7 years. The reporter continued. This case, which began when a private reported misconduct and was assaulted for it, exposed a criminal enterprise within Fort Benning's training command. The private's father, chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff General Eugene Brandt, personally oversaw the investigation. Critics initially questioned whether family connections influenced the proceedings, but the evidence presented at trial was so overwhelming that even defense attorneys acknowledged the convictions were justified. Eugene turned off the television. Across the room, Colonel Walker smiled. "Sir, that was a masterclass in how to conduct an investigation. I've never seen evidence that clean. We did it right because these men and women deserve justice done properly." Eugene gathered his papers. Any updates on the soldiers who testified? All received transfer orders to their requested assignments. Private Roth is heading to Ranger School. Private Braun got orders to Germany. And Private Brandt. Walker's smile widened. He's been accepted to Officer Candidate School. Starts next month. Eugene felt warmth spread through his chest. Matthew had earned that. Despite everything Collins had done to him, his son had refused to let it break him. He completed his recovery, returned to duty, and excelled. What about Collins' other victims? The ones who transferred before the investigation. 23 soldiers have come forward with additional complaints now that Collins is convicted. The Army is reviewing their records, correcting negative evaluations that were retaliation, and offering them opportunities to continue their careers. Leon Richards is returning to active duty. Randy Palmer is being promoted to sergeant. The others are getting clean slates. Good. Eugene stood, adjusting his uniform. The real test of this wasn't just convicting Collins and Beasley. It was showing every soldier in the Army that reporting misconduct won't destroy your career. That integrity matters. That we protect people who do the right thing. Walker stood as well. "Sir, if I may, what you did here went beyond regulation. You could have handled this quietly, had Collins reassigned, swept it under the rug. Instead, you made it public, transparent. You sent a message that rank doesn't protect corruption. That wasn't the message." Eugene met his eyes. The message was that the uniform still means something. That we keep our promises to the people who serve. Matthew enlisted believing in that promise. Collins broke it. I just restored it. The graduation ceremony at Officer Candidate School was held on a sunny October morning. Eugene sat in the bleachers, watching candidates in dress uniforms march onto the parade field. His chest tightened when he spotted Matthew in the formation. Standing tall, his broken arm fully healed, his bearing confident. The commandant's speech was brief but powerful. Today, these candidates become officers in the United States Army. They will lead soldiers, make life-and-death decisions, and uphold the values we hold sacred. Remember, leadership isn't about rank or privilege. It's about integrity, about protecting those you lead, about having the courage to do what's right even when it's difficult. Eugene thought about Collins, rotting in Leavenworth, about Beasley, facing 20 years for betraying everything the uniform represented, about the NCOs who'd enabled them, now discharged and facing civilian prosecution for conspiracy. Justice hadn't been easy. It had taken months of investigation, hundreds of hours of testimony, and political pressure from officers who thought Eugene was overreaching. But he'd held firm because Matthew and the other soldiers deserved leaders who protected them, not predators who exploited them. The commandant began calling names. Second Lieutenant Matthew Eugene Brandt. Matthew marched forward. The commandant pinned gold bars on his shoulders, saluted, and shook his hand. Matthew turned to face the audience, his eyes finding Eugene's. He saluted sharply. Eugene returned the salute, pride swelling in his chest. After the ceremony, they met on the parade ground. Matthew's fellow graduates swarmed around, congratulating each other, but he walked straight to his father. "Congratulations, Lieutenant." Matthew's grin was incandescent. "Thank you, sir." "General." "Dad." He laughed. "I still don't know what to call you." "Try Dad." Eugene pulled him into a brief hug. "I'm proud of you. Not just for this, but for everything. You could have stayed quiet when you saw corruption. You could have let Collins' abuse slide. But you stood up. You reported it. And when he broke your arm for it, you didn't break. I had good backup." Matthew's voice was thick with emotion. "You came to Fort Benning, and you destroyed them. Collins, Beasley, all of them. You didn't just protect me. You protected everyone. That's what the uniform means. What's always meant. Leaders who forget that don't deserve to wear it." They stood together in the autumn sunlight, father and son, general and lieutenant. Around them, families celebrated new officers beginning their careers. Above, the American flag snapped in the breeze. Eugene thought about the call he'd received 6 months ago, his son's voice cracking with pain and fear. He thought about walking into Fort Benning, ready to burn it all down if necessary. He thought about the moment Collins had confessed, Beasley had been led away in handcuffs, and justice had finally been served. "What's your first assignment?" Eugene asked. "Infantry platoon at Fort Carson. I ship out next month." "Good post. You'll do well there." "I hope so." Matthew paused. "Dad, I wanted to ask you something. That morning at Benning, when you walked into Collins' office, what were you thinking?" Eugene considered the question. "I was thinking that I'd spent 30 years building a military where integrity mattered, where soldiers were protected, where the uniform meant something sacred. And some bastard in Georgia had forgotten that and hurt my son because of it." He met Matthew's eyes. "I was thinking that I'd remind everyone what happens when you betray the promise we make to our people." "You did more than remind them. You made an example." "No, I held them accountable. There's a difference. I followed every regulation, honored every right they had, and built a case so strong no one could question it. That's not revenge. That's justice." Matthew nodded slowly. "I want to be that kind of leader. The kind who protects their people. The kind who does the right thing even when it's hard." "You already are." Eugene gripped his shoulder. "You proved it when you reported Collins. Everything else was just me finishing what you started." They stood in comfortable silence for a moment. Then Matthew grinned. "Come on. Some of my classmates want to meet you." Apparently, the story of the chairman showing up at Fort Benning to destroy a corrupt colonel is pretty legendary now. Legendary. Eugene shook his head, but he was smiling. "Let's go. But I'm buying dinner tonight. We're celebrating." "Yes, sir." They walked across the parade ground together, the October sun warm on their shoulders. Behind them, Fort Benning continued its mission of training soldiers. But now, those soldiers knew that integrity mattered, that reporting corruption wouldn't destroy them, that the promise of the uniform to protect those who serve was real. Eugene Brandt had made sure of it. And in a cell at Fort Leavenworth, Roderick Collins understood exactly what it meant to break that promise. He'd have 15 years to think about it. Justice, Eugene thought, always felt better when it was earned through truth evidence, and unwavering adherence to principle. He'd come to Fort Benning as a father protecting his son. He'd left as the chairman, reminding the Army what the uniform truly meant. And that made all the difference.
This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for your precious time. If you enjoyed this story, then please make sure you subscribe to this channel. That would help me a lot. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.